Hello and welcome back to What's Millie Making, where I'm Millie and this is a space where I talk about the past, present, and future of making. Today's video is all about summer knitting plans with stash yarn. Now, whenever I make seasonal plans for myself, be it for a video or just like my personal journal, I will always make more plans that I know I can reasonably make within whatever period of time. In this case, it's July, August, and September, so the next 3 months. And I've actually found this to be a positive, especially this year as I'm trying to stick to a low buy. When I have these plans written down somewhere, wherever it may be, in my mind, I'm thinking of those as immediate cast ons, and it gives me less of a temptation to look outward for what I want to make next. Technically, there's so many patterns and yarns that I want to use at any given time, but just having the intention in my mind of thinking, okay, I'm going to cast these on in the immediate future makes me focused and excited on those projects and less likely to get the shoppies, like go and online window shop, in-person window shop, which eventually leads to real life window shopping. So no, I will not be making whatever half dozen or plus. I don't even know off the top of my head how many patterns I'm including in this video. And before I get into the patterns and yarns, I'm going to talk a little bit about my summer knitting guidelines and some conclusions I've come to after the past few years, past few summers of trying to be a summer knitter. If you don't care about that at all and you just want to see the patterns and the yarns, there are chapters in this video and you can skip on straight ahead to that. If you want to know about how I formulated and picked my summer knitting, then let's get into that. So I came up with this chart, which actually it's a very obvious chart when you see it, and it can honestly be applied to any knitting. But I've found it to be particularly useful when I'm picking summer knitting projects. So it comes down to being a process versus project knitter. Now, people don't have to fall into either category. If you don't know what I'm talking about, process knitting is when you are knitting for the sake of knitting, like you are enjoying the process of knitting whatever you are making, and then project knitting is when you are solely focused on the finished object, be it clothing, be it homeware, whatever you want. The point of your knitting is purely to get that finished object. That's not to say people need to fall into either or category. There's so many gray areas. I would think of it as a scale rather than two separate non-intersecting categories, which brings me to my chart. Like I said, this chart can really be applied to any knitting project that you are picking, but I find it particularly useful for summer knitting because maybe I don't take in either of these factors quite as much, and they are more, I think, relevant for summer knitting for me. So along the x-axis, we have the enjoyability of the process. How much am I going to enjoy knitting with this yarn, knitting this project? For example, there are quite a few patterns that I think are really, really pretty. They're like these ribbed tank tops that are knit with a light fingering weight cotton yarn at a very fine gauge. And I know I'm just not going to enjoy knitting that. I have tried knitting such things in the past and I never make it past a few inches of the rib knit because I just don't find it enjoyable whatsoever. Then along the y-axis, we have the wearability of the finished object. How likely am I going to reach for whatever I'm making when it's officially finished? Going back to that previous example of the cotton yarns knit with the light yarn, cotton yarns. I'm getting all tongue-tied. I might be talking a little bit faster than usual, but that's because it's so hot and I really want to just finish recording this video. What was I saying? Oh yeah, going back to that previous example of a light fingering weight cotton ribbed tank, honestly, I think I would probably get a decent amount of wear out of this project. However, my goal when I'm picking projects for the summer is my project needs to be in the upper right quadrant of this graph. I need to maximize both the enjoyability and the wearability. How will I achieve that? That is the next step. So then these are the conclusions from my past few summers of knitting. Number one, the yarn matters. And I feel like when it comes to wool, I can knit with really any wool yarn. I can knit with super soft wool yarns. I can knit with super rustic wool yarns. The same cannot be applied to summer fibers. There are some cotton yarns, like mercerized cotton and just other very ropey cotton that I just find so unenjoyable. And there's really no point in forcing myself to work with those yarns. Number two, pick projects with looser gauges because I found that when it comes to using plant fibers, the tighter the gauge, the more stress it puts on my hand. Basically, whatever I knit with these plant fibers or summer yarns, I want to minimize the amount of tension on the yarn, because that one gives me less hand strain, and two leads to less like clamminess. Like, there's nothing I hate more than when I'm knitting in the summer and I just feel my hands getting sweaty. It is the most off-putting feeling when knitting that I have experienced. Like, I hate it so much. Like, it gives me the physical ick. And adding on to that, that means I will be using metal needles for everything. I know a lot of people say because plant fibers or like summer yarns can be so slippery, they recommend using bamboo needles or something that has a little bit of friction. Sorry, not for me. I am working on one project with cotton yarn and it has slipped off my needles a few times, but I would rather deal with that than the feeling of cotton and bamboo needles and clammy hands. Like, I'm having war flashbacks just talking about it. So that is that rule. Number three. Is this number three or number four? I guess metal needles could be number three or it could be 2.5. I don't know. It doesn't matter. The numbers don't matter. The next rule is that I'm not going to be making anything fitted. And this is kind of like twofold. Number one, I just don't think I would enjoy the feeling of knitted fabric close to my skin when it is super hot, because when it is hot I feel like you feel like every like little prickliness of the yarn, like every little fiber. You can just, I feel like I'm just hyper aware of it at that point. And number two, I think for me to knit anything fitted, I need bust darts. I need some sort of bust shaping, and most summer patterns just simply don't include that. And I do not feel, I just don't want to have to do the math myself. I don't feel the need to add that in myself. I also came to this other obvious conclusion, and that is I do not need to make knits for the hottest of summer days. A lot of times when I see like posts about summer knitting or summer yarn, summer projects, people point out like, oh, like this isn't really appropriate for my summer because it's just so hot and humid, which I can totally relate to. I live in the Northeast. It's currently over 100 degrees. It's like 60% humidity. I mean, today is exceptionally hot, or this weekend is exceptionally hot. However, even like our average temperatures are anywhere from like mid 80s to upper 80s with a decent amount of humidity. I feel like we get a lot of summer storms, so it's always hot and humid. And the reality is, not even 8 times, 9 times out of 10, I will not feel the urge to reach for a knitted object in this weather, especially after I started sewing. Like, I really like wearing my handmade clothes, but if I can wear something that is hand sewn, or not even hand sewn, because I don't do hand sewing, I use a sewing machine. If I can make a, if not make, if I can pick to wear, if I can wear a handmade piece of sewn clothing versus a handmade piece of knit clothing when it's super hot and humid, I'm just going to be reaching for the sewn clothing. So it's just not worth the effort, like the time and effort it takes to make these knit garments, because I'm not going to enjoy making them. And like the likelihood of me wearing them is just not as high either. So I would rather put my energy towards wear not wearing. I would rather put my energy towards making knits that I can wear on slightly cooler summer days, like when it drops below 80 sometimes. And these projects or these knits can also be worn into the fall, and they can be worn in the spring as well. So they just have a greater like time period of wearability, and they are a little bit more enjoyable to make because maybe I can use yarns that have a little bit of wool in them in that case, or they are a slightly heavier weight. All of these decisions have informed my summer knitting. I've talked a lot about what I don't want to knit, so let me talk a little bit about what I do want to knit. I do want to knit some fingering weight garments. In the past, I've been hesitant to knit them because they take so long, but I do think I'm a much quicker knitter now. I also knit my first fingering weight garment last year. Was it last summer or spring? I don't remember. And I got a ton of wear out of it. So I would love to add more to my wardrobe, especially because I just don't really have that many lighter weight garments. I feel like I have a lot of worsted and Aran weight and not as much fingering and DK weight. So now that that is all done and over with, let's talk patterns and yarns. I will be looking down at my iPad quite a bit for this video because I just need to look at like the information on the pattern. So I've also split the patterns into a few categories. Ideally, I would like to pick like one pattern from each of these categories, but even then, it's a lot of categories. It's not a lot of categories, actually. It's a number of categories. And even though it's not a lot, I know it's more than I can knit in 3 months. So, first up, we got some fingering weight colorwork sweaters. I would love to knit a fingering weight colorwork sweater. I have quite a few saved in my Ravelry favorites. I purchased a lot of the patterns. I have a decent amount of fingering weight yarn in stash as well, and this falls under the category of things I could wear maybe like early fall. It's definitely not something I can wear in the summer, but the lightness of the project, even if I am knitting with wool, I feel like makes it summer appropriate because it's not like I'm sitting with like 800 grams of wool in my lap as I'm working on these projects. First sweater is the Paul Clay sweater by Midori Hirose. I have been obsessed with this sweater forever. I love looking at all the different color combinations that people have come up with this sweater. So it comes in a very wide range of sizes from like kids to 6XL. It does have a 22 stitch gauge, which I think is a little bit loose for fingering weight yarns in my opinion. The recommended yarn is Jameson of Shetland Spindrift. And I actually bought a yarn to make this pattern with like 3 or 4 years ago at this point, and I still want to use that yarn. Okay, and here is the yarn that I would love to use for my main color. Also, apologies if I'm kind of like all over the screen in this video. I need to get up and get the yarn. So this is the Sea Cliff Fingering by Sea Change Fibers, 450 yards to 100 grams. It's 100% US Rambouillet, and this one does have a gauge from 22 to 28 stitches, so I think it could totally work for the Paul Clay sweater because even though it is fingering weight, it has a lot of yardage. It is also like quite a, I don't know, lofty or airy yarn. So I do think I should be able to hit the gauge, and also just has such a nice hand feel. I wonder if they still sell this base. I really like Sea Change Fibers because one, I love their colors, and two, they use a lot of interesting bases. I feel like over the last few years, it's become more and more popular for hand dyers to use like US milled bases, but from my knowledge, or I mean, I haven't been knitting for that long. Maybe like, what, like 5 or 6 years? 5 years? I don't know. What is time? Everything after COVID has just turned into one big blur. Anywho, from however many years I have been knitting, I think they were just one of the first hand dyers that I was aware of that prioritized using local fibers. And I really like that they also dye up a lot of tonal yarns because I'm definitely a tonal yarn girly. As far as my contrast colors go, this is where things get difficult. I have so many Paul Clay sweaters, I think, saved in my Ravelry projects, so I don't really know what direction I want to go in. I have two options that I picked immediately from stash. They kind of have two different vibes. One is neon-y and one is a little bit more neutral. Let me grab them. So option number one is a bunch of these neons from Kindred Red. These are all on a, oh my god, I just hit myself in the face with the Ziploc bag. Should I take them out because it's very crinkly? I don't want it to be super crinkly. Kindred Red, I think, makes some of the most gorgeous yarns, but they don't do a lot of frequent yarn updates. I bought this yarn a few years ago and I didn't really know what to make with it, and I thought, oh, it would be perfect for the yoke of the Paul Clay sweater. I feel like it's really rare to get such vibrant and punchy colors on non-superwash yarns. Maybe it's a little bit more common now, but back when I purchased it, I feel like it was not as common. Like most dyers only use like superwash merino. Again, this is just like the shifting trends in yarn. I feel like in the year of 2026, more yarn dyers are using non-superwash bases. The tangents never stop. Anyhow, I think that would be a great color combination to use for the yoke. And then maybe I could insert like some navy into the yoke as well. I don't know. I'm unsure. Maybe I could also use some white in the yoke. I don't know. It's really all up in the air. And then option number two, the one that's a little bit more neutral, this is a Pride and Prejudice Advent from another hand dyer. Ugh, I can't remember their name off the top of my head. They're a Canadian hand dyer. And I was obsessed with this collection, but it's from 2023 and I still have not knitted up because I've been just saving it for an unknown, ideal, perfect project, I think it could also work really, really well with this color because there is a pretty dark navy blue in there as well. So it could kind of like complement this. The Paul Clay sweater is really interesting because when you look at people's projects, like the way that they distribute the value of colors is interesting. Like some people do it so it's a gradient from like lightest to darkest. Some people do it so it's darkest, lightest, darkest. Some people spread it all around. There's just so many different possibilities. And as somebody who's like very indecisive, I don't know what this means for me. It might take me a while to come up with yarn colors for this. I also know, I think like last year or the year before for the New Jersey wool walk, I had also picked out some colors from my yarn stash that I could use for the yoke, and I think I bought some additional colors to use in the yoke. If I can find that project plan in like my freeform app, maybe I'll insert like a screenshot of that. That is another option as well. Basically, there are a lot of options, but they all end up using this sea cliff fingering as the main color. The second colorwork fingering weight colorwork sweater that I could knit is one that I actually cast on for my birthday cast on a few years ago. My birthday is in July, so I purchased all of these yarns for my birthday and I cast on my birthday, and all of these are really special yarns. So the pattern is the Twigs by Junko Okamoto. So this is why like when I'm looking for patterns on Ravelry, I have basically stopped looking by yarn weight. I prefer to look by gauge because this pattern has a 30 stitch gauge, but it's listed as sport weight. I will be calling that a fingering weight sweater. This one does only come in one size and it is a circular yoke sweater. So let me show you my cast on from a few years ago. Da, 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 da. I love these colors so much. And when I was knitting this, I was very, very inexperienced. Not very, very. I was quite inexperienced with color work. I think I was just getting the hang. I was just getting the hang of doing two-handed color work. If even that was it might have still been when I was like picking up the strand and dropping the strand. I don't remember, but if I am going to knit this project this summer, I will be frogging this and starting over because my gauge I feel like is so different now. I used to be a much tighter knitter. I also might adjust some of the color placements, but this project just makes me so happy. Like I love these colors so much. I also maybe would adjust the gauge because 30 stitches is quite tight. I don't even know if this is 30 stitches or not. I don't know. Think I would also adjust the construction of this sweater because I don't like straight up circular yoke sweaters. I don't mind circular yoke sweaters, and then you add in a little after you do your circular yoke increases right before you split for sleeves, you add in a few raglan increases, and I actually learned that originally from a Midori Hirose pattern. So that actually might also be in the Paul Clay sweater. I think it is because that is also a circular yoke sweater. So if I pick this, I would do that same adjustment. As for the yarns for this project, it's a delicious combination of yarns. So for my main color, it's another Sea Chain Fibers yarn. This is Swale Fingering, which is 490 yards to 100 grams, 80% American Merino / Rambouillet, and 20% cashmere. This is like seriously so ridiculously soft. This is seriously so ridiculously soft. This is like one of my favorite shades of pink. Everything about this color and this yarn just sparks joy, and it's super soft. Like even though it's so hot, like I'm not really feeling any, not even I'm not really, I am straight up not feeling any prickliness on my skin. For my contrast colors, I have some Moondrake Fua Fua. This is another merino and cashmere blend. And then I have two different colors of plaid yarns. They are another US mill, I believe. They're a mill. I feel like they work with another US yarn brand that has their own mill, but these are like these, what do you call this technique when there's like two different colors and then they're spun together? Can't remember the name off the top of my head, but I have two different colors of those yarns, and those were my contrast colors. Even if I don't knit this sweater this summer, I will be knitting this sweater at some point in my lifetime because I love it so much. It's just, I don't know. It's a lot of knitting because it is fingering weight. Whenever I get around to knitting on it, I will love it. I believe I have one last option for fingering weight sweaters, and that is the Shifty by Andrea Mowry. This is another one where it's listed as sport weight, but I will be calling it a fingering weight sweater because it has a 26 stitch gauge. Now, when I first discovered the sweater, when I first started knitting, I was absolutely feral for it. I was so obsessed. Like, I was just nonstop thinking about this sweater pattern. I still really, really like it, but it hasn't been on front of mind until recently when I was looking through my Ravelry favorites. And I really love the stitch pattern that Andrea Mowry uses for like all the shifty collection, if that's what you want to call it. That said, I don't really love the fit of this sweater, and I know that a lot of people have complaints, and I think that's kind of why when I first initially purchased the yarn for this sweater, I never cast on because all the comments about the fit kind of put me off. Now that I'm a much more experienced knitter, I think if I were to make this sweater, I would basically not really make the sweater. I would just pick another fingering weight pattern in my library and just insert the stitch pattern because, yeah, the circular yoke fit is not my favorite. Like the neckline sits kind of weird, and I think there's just like a lot of complaints about the fit even after it was regraded. I think the stitch pattern is absolutely beautiful, but it's something I could just easily substitute into a different pattern that I like the fit of better. As for what yarn I would use for this project, it is behind me, so let me grab it. It is a lot of spin cycle. So this project is super duper expensive. So I bought these yarns like over a period of like a year or two. I would just buy a little bit of spin cycle here or there, maybe when it went on sale or if I went to a knitting me yarn store that had spin cycle. So I'm not 100% sold on this yarn combination. Basically, for the background color, I 100% know I would want to use this color. It is Midsummer by Spin Cycle, and I think this is one of my all-time favorite Spin Cycle colorways. It's like pinks, oranges, with some greens into it. It's just, like the name is perfect, Midsummer, because it is midsummer. Like it's literally that time of year. And then I believe the pattern has you use 3 separate contrast colors. I do have 3 separate contrast colors of Spin Cycle that I could use, but I also think this could be an excellent way to use up yarn scraps because I do have a lot of fingering weight yarn in stash. Like I could use up yarn scraps. I could use just like some of the lone single skeins I have in my stash as the contrast color and use this like color changing yarn as the background color. But if I was to use the Spin Cycle as my contrast colors, I have a skein each of Love Spell, Unicorn, and the Castle. I think I actually have another skein of the Castle. So if I were to run out of yarn, so this would be the yarn combination, which maybe they don't look the best together, but I feel like the beauty of this sweater or the stitch pattern, the sweater and the stitch pattern, when you knit them together, it just like completely transforms because I have knit the night shift shawl twice. One time I knit it as a shawl and one time I knit it as a scarf. And yeah, the stitch pattern just really, really highlights, I feel like, spin cycle or hand spun yarn, basically just like this color changing, barber pulling kind of yarn. So those are the 3 fingering weight colorwork sweaters I am contemplating. The next category is a solid colored plain t-shirt. And I was going to say stockinette, but there's actually one pattern in here that I don't think is 100%. I know it's not 100% stockinette, but for this category, I want to use this yarn, which is this Midcoast string by Stitch Together Studio that I bought at VKL a few years ago. This is another one of those like color changing, barber pulling, hand spun looking yarns. Unfortunately, this dyer no longer dyes. I bought this at VKL a few years ago because I was just intrigued by the colors and the blend. So it's 80% USA Targhee, 10% bamboo, 10% Tessa silk, and it is hand dyed in Iowa, mill spun in Illinois. Super small batch and rad AF. I wound up my first skein of this. It's so pretty. I just love seeing all the color changes in this type of yarn. And then as far as what pattern I want to knit with this, I think I want to pick one of Tori Yu's fingering weight t-shirt patterns. So first up is the Avenue Tee. I knit that one last year. I love it. I love the way it fits. It has a contiguous yoke. It's straightforward to knit. It's really enjoyable to wear. Option number 2 is the, wait, I need to look at my notes because I don't remember the name of the other ones that I have not. Oops. I've not knit before. Option number 2 is the Skyline Tee. This one is a saddle shoulder that has like a ribbing detail on the shoulder that is really, really pretty. It also has a slightly tighter gauge. So the Avenue T has 24 stitch gauge and the Skyline T is a 25 stitch gauge. I think I could easily hit gauge either of those gauges with this yarn. This is again like quite a lofty yarn, so it could go for a looser gauge or a tighter gauge. And then the last one is one I was not contemplating because I think it just like flew under my radar. However, Jackie of Jackie is Making recently finished this pattern and it looks so cute on her that it like went into my Ravelry favorites after that. And it is the Prospect Tee, also by Torio, and this one just has like a cute little textured stitch on it. It reminds me a lot of the Clay Spire, I want to say, by Ozetta. And this one has a drop shoulder construction. And I am interested to see how this like color changing yarn would work with that stitch pattern. So this I think is going to be my first summer cast on. I just have to decide which of those patterns I should make. And then there is another new to me designer whose patterns, like I was like, oh my god, I'm immediately obsessed with them. And the pattern designer is, her name is A Pilot's Daughter's Travels. Let me open up her Ravelry page. I believe she's Chinese, so she has a lot of like Chinese inspired designs, and they're all so stunning. The two that are front of mind for me, number one is the Beijing top. I really, really love the neckline detail in this top. Like it has this little bit of eyelet opening, and then it looks like there's some sort of like, I don't know if it's like a fold over collar or what, but I really, really like the construction of this top. It's really, really pretty. And then the second design of theirs that I'm really interested in is the Shanghai top. This one has kind of like an asymmetrical opening along the neckline, and it has like cute little lace details along the sleeve and the bottom of the body. Both of these are knit with Knitting for Olive pure silk. Now, I recently watched a video by Sunday Knitting Society, I believe, and her video was all about her favorite summer yarns. I totally recommend checking out the video. There's a ton of great recommendations in there. And she listed Knitting for Olive Pure Silk as her number one summer yarn. And I'm not gonna lie, it gave me the strong urge to purchase that yarn. So in this entire video, if there's one project I might end up purchasing new yarn for, it is probably one of these two tops because I really, really love them. I'm interested in trying this yarn, and it is the recommended yarn for these patterns. However, technically I do have a yarn in my stash that could work, and that is Knitting for Olive Merino, just like their regular 100% non-superwash merino in their fingering weight. This is the color Bottle Green, and this is a deep, deep stash for me. This color is really, really pretty, and I know I would wear a long sleeved tee in this yarn. So we'll see if maybe I'll cast on, or like I'll knit a swatch with this yarn and see how I'm feeling. If I'm not feeling it, I can buy the pure silk. This is the danger of it being my birthday month because I can justify any purchase being like, oh, that's for my birthday. It's my birthday, so I can get it. Like, it's my birthday. I should just get it. That is a dangerous rabbit hole to fall under. That's actually quite a few of these yarns were previous summer yarn. No, they were previous birthday purchases for myself. But I will try with this yarn first if I decide to make these projects. And if I'm not feeling it, perhaps I will try out the pure silk. If you have knit with Knitting for Olive pure silk, would you recommend it or not? I do feel like it is a contentious yarn. Some people really love it. Some people are like, the texture is off-putting. Let me know your thoughts. I think that is a wrap on the fingering weight patterns. Okay, yes. The next category is a heavier weight tank top, and that is using this specific yarn that I started knitting with a few summers ago, but I didn't finish the project and I'm now drawing it. Okay, here. This is a Noro Uchiwa, I believe is the name. And I bought a singular skein of it a few years ago, and I cast on a project. I don't remember the pattern name. It was a James Watts pattern, and it was another modularly knit pattern. It has a really, really cool construction, but like my gauge was completely off, which is why I stopped knitting it. Also, when it comes to this yarn, the yarn store that I bought this yarn no longer sells it. And when I looked it up online, it's kind of expensive to buy, especially like with shipping. So ideally, I would love to make a project that I can just use the yarn that I already have. If I need to use like a contrast color for any sort of like neckline, ribbing, bind off, that kind of thing, I'm okay with that. But I would love for the body of the sweater to be this yarn. Like the colors in it are really pretty, but when I look at like just like a top down project in this yarn, I don't love how the striping looks by itself. So my thought was to pick a textured project. So I do have two pattern options. Number one is a free pattern option. It is Joy by Sarah Hatton. This one is knit bottom up, and I generally loathe bottom up projects, but I think that is an exception for summer knitting because you're just knitting like a tube in the round. It's marginally more, what's the word? Enjoyable than knitting a summer, or not a summer, a sweater top down when you have to like add in the sleeves and stuff. It gets all complicated because for a tank top, I don't have to worry about the sleeves. I'm just knitting a tube for a while. And this one, it does have a limited size range because it is an older pattern. But like I said, it is a free pattern and it comes in this like textured rib stitch. The second option is a newer pattern. It just came out in June. It's the Snap P-Top by My Knit Projects. I really, really love the look of this. It has a broken rib, which means there's a lot of knit rounds. Like part of the reason why some knit garments don't appeal to me, depending on like the type of rib and the stitch gauge and stuff, is that rib can be annoying to knit, specifically 1x1 rib. I don't mind a wider rib, but 1x1 rib. This does have a wider rib, and like I said, it's a broken rib. I just really like the finishing details on this, and also it seems to be a very well graded pattern. So it has two fit options. It also has optional bust darts, which is like a huge thing. I feel like I just don't see that as much in knitting patterns. I know I said I didn't want to knit any fitted garments. I do not think when I would pick a size for this, I wouldn't pick a size that is fitted. I would pick a size that has some ease in it. I also like that it has a very in-depth schematic, because another thing with a lot of tank top patterns, like summer tank top patterns, I feel like they have a very deep armhole, especially in the larger size range. And I just don't like the look of that. I don't like when my bra is peeking out of the armhole. So this just seems like, from what I can see, a well graded pattern, a well designed pattern. And I really, really like the color that the designer picked as well, which obviously has no impact on me because I'm not using that color, but that has like a unconscious influence on me. So those are all the patterns that I want to knit. And then I also have a few things that I've been contemplating self-drafting for myself. So number one is a wide rib boat neck long sleeve in stripes with this one yarn that I purchased a few years ago. And I did cast on a project. This project sounds like my idea of hell. Currently, this project sounds like my idea of hell, but when I cast it on, I was a baby knitter. I think it was my first year knitting. I didn't realize how awful knitting an all over twisted rib garment with fingering weight yarn would be. Alas, I quickly learned. Also, I don't even know what's going on with this sizing. This was supposed to be a fitted top, and as you can see, it's supposed to have negative ease and it's already too big for me. And I think I was slightly skinnier back then too. So I don't really know. This is going to be frogged. So originally I bought 5 different colors of Amano Chasqui for this pattern. So Amano Chasqui is a very interesting blend. I haven't seen it elsewhere. I think it's 60% superwash merino, and then I don't remember the exact breakup, but the other 40% is cotton and linen. So it's a very interesting fiber blend, and I am interested in making a garment with this. The only thing is, I think I put this pink into like some other scrappy project, so I only have the purple, the 2 greens, and the orange. And I don't know how I like these colors by themselves without the pink. I also was looking at colors of this yarn. They also have like a baby yellow that I think could look good with this, or maybe like a dark brown could look good. That's the 4 colors I have. Let me grab them. So these are the 4 colors that I have. Like I like them. I just don't know if it feels like a complete palette. Like, do I need to add in 1 or 2 other colors there? The thing is, this yarn only comes in 100-gram skeins, so I fear that if I were to purchase 1 or 2 more colors, I would just be left with a lot of leftovers. And because it is such a unique yarn, it's kind of difficult to use it with other projects. I'll have to see if I can find that pink. I don't remember what project I used it in, if it is something I frogged or if I ended up keeping it, but if I was to buy more yarn for this, I don't know which color would look good. Would it be the yellow, the brown, or a pink, or white? I think I had initially purchased a white knitting for olive cotton merino with this, but the cotton merino is so thin, it didn't look right with this yarn. Anyways, this is the yarn that I want to use. And then as for the design, I feel like there are a lot of cool boat neck top knitting patterns. However, none of the boat necks are boat necking the way I want it to boat neck. So I feel like they're just too wide and shallow of a boat neck for my personal preference. Like I know there's blouse number, I don't know, 1, 4, 5 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. There is the Bear Blouse by Petite Knit. Those are the two that come to mind for me. I just don't love the neckline shaping of those. I want the boat neck to be not as wide because I don't want my bra straps to show, and I want it to have a little bit more of a scoop. As is, I feel like they kind of sit straight across, and I feel like if you have like a larger chest or broader shoulders, which I do, sometimes like the fabric like kind of flips or it sticks out a little, which I don't love the look of. So for my self-drafted top, I do like the contiguous construction, and I think it works well with stripes. I was thinking of doing a drop shoulder, but I do want it to sit pretty close to where my actual shoulder is, which means I would need to do a set-in sleeve, and doing a set-in sleeves with stripes is just really annoying. So I think I would do a contiguous shoulder construction, and I want to use a wide rib. So over the winter I knit this one Pearl Soho pattern. It's like a cowl pattern, and I knit it twice. It uses a 5x1 rib, and I absolutely love this stitch pattern. It was so squishy. It was enjoyable to knit. I love the resulting fabric. I've just been itching to knit a garment with it, and I think this is the perfect option. I was actually just looking up like wide rib boat neck sweater, and Gap Factory actually has a top that is exactly the vibe that I'm going for. Another option that I think could be interesting would be to play around with the stitch combinations. Like maybe just the body would be ribbed and then the sleeve would be stockinette, but I don't know how that would look. Or I could use one rib pattern for the body and a different rib pattern for the sleeve. That could be interesting as well. I don't know. These are all just ideas percolating in my brain. The yarn fell on the floor, but I'm almost done recording this video. The last pattern the last category of patterns are ones that I don't have like specific yarns for, because these are just, I'm calling them scrappy sweaters, but they're not 100% scrappy. They're basically either scrappy or like color work. Basically, I have a lot of single skeins, I have a lot of leftover yarns, and I would love to find projects where I could use those up. And I really, really love looking at ready-to-wear sweater designs, and there are 3 that have been like living rent free in my brain that I think it would be cool to come up with my own version. So number 1 is the JW Anderson house sweater. This one, actually all of these are knit at quite a chunky weight gauge, so maybe it wouldn't be the best idea to knit it in the summer, or I could save it for like September. I don't know. But basically I'm obsessed with this sweater. It's been popular for like the last year or so, and I have been just lusting over it the entire time. There's also the JW Anderson large Argyle sweater. So they do have quite a few Argyle sweaters, but they have one that uses, I think, like 3 different colors for these really large diamonds in the Argyle pattern, and it's kind of offset from the sweater. It's offset from the center, and I love this design so, so much. And I think I would have to do some math and stuff, but I think like if I had, like I have some single skeins of DK weight or worsted weight yarn, and if I could make like a whole diamond out of one skein, that would be pretty great. And then my last like scrappy sweater and so idea is this one Celine striped sweater from this summer, and it has a few different color options, and it's basically like this stripy background, and then in the forefront there's a Celine logo. Obviously I don't feel the need to knit the Celine logo. I would want to do like some other color work design, but I really love this idea of using like a striped scrappy background and then having a strong motif in the foreground. Like as a design concept, I really, really enjoy that. And then lastly, I want to knit a scrappy little bandana. I have a few like, again, like design ideas that I have sketched out to pick a main color, and then just use like some yarn scraps for my contrast colors. And then my last kind of scrappy idea is to play around with the bow socks that I have been knitting. So this is another idea that has just been in my brain for a few years at this point, and I've finally knit my first pair. So, and this one I messed up. The bow is upside down on one sock, and that just happens to be the sock that I'm finishing right now. But it just has like the little bow on the top of the foot. Let me show you the one that's right side up. I didn't feel like frogging this one because I know I want to adjust the bow chart on here. I want to make it a little bit smaller. But yeah, that is the idea, to have the little bow on the top of the foot. So like when I'm wearing flats, you see like the bow on the top of the foot. I think that's just like a really cute idea, and it was inspired by a few Sandy Liang socks, like ready to wear socks. And yeah, I just want to play around with this motif in different socks. Also, one of my local yarn stores, Yarnia, has their summer sock bingo, where they have a bingo board and like each box represents like a different knitting technique when it comes to socks. And the goal is, I think, obviously, to just get bingo. And I think that might help motivate my sock knitting. And that is finally a wrap. So those are all my options of things I can knit this summer with yarns that I already have. It's a lot. I know I won't get up to all of it, but that is okay. If you made it all the way here, thank you so much for sticking along. If you enjoyed the video, please feel free to give it a thumbs up and follow along for future videos. So I have the idea of this video, summer knitting plans, and then I also had one video idea, like a compilation of fingering weight sweaters and tees. I know I've talked about quite a few in this video, but there are even more of them. I don't know if that, obviously there are more of them. There are even more of them that I'm interested in knitting. Alas, that is for some time in the future. I am so done recording because it's so hot and I need to go drink something. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. As always, I would love to know what you were working on while watching this video. I love to be influenced by other people's knitting, and maybe I want to make what you are making. If you have thoughts on any of the patterns I chatted about in this video, or the yarns, like if you've already knit with them and you have opinions that you think I would appreciate, please feel free to share it. If you want to share your summer knitting plans as well, like I said, I love to be influenced. Please do share. And that is a wrap. I hope to see you again next time. Happy knitting. Bye bye.